February meeting of the local planning
That's a
committee.
daunting request.
Welcome, everyone. Yes. I think the first item on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes from our January joint session.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, there is. I sent out a
Please.
follow-up email.
Yes.
To make sure that we knew which Mary was Mary.
Yes.
When I was talking about that. And after that, Margot did send me a note that,
Elizabeth Harding.
Liz, thank you, Harder is, Harder or Harding?
Harder.
Harder is with a duh, not a tuh, a D, not a T, so that will be changed when I submit them to
Thank you.
town.
Barbara, you're such a faithful steward of the mission. I appreciate you. Yes.
Judith Maltstadt, who also does the select board meeting minutes.
Pardon me?
Judith Maltstadt, who also does the meeting minutes for the select board, will also be submitting a set of meeting minutes for the planning board and the select board. And I should have notified you prior to that, but I
Yeah, that
will
would have
share
saved
them.
4 hours.
I'm sorry, Barbara, I wasn't even thinking, and I apologize. I will share that set of meeting minutes as well, so I do.
I will on the record
apologize
say
for
your
that.
meeting minutes are better.
I was gonna say who minuted it better, instead of not who wore it better, but who minuted it better. So, thank you, Barbara, very much. With that, as we get rolling, just to sort of start, which will be a very meaningful meeting tonight, I want to express I really appreciate you guys, as epitomized by Barbara, and just your ongoing commitment and dedication and diligence to this process, which is taking on a life of its own. So I appreciate all of you and being here as we plug along on doing this with our mission. So thank you. I can provide a little update on the workflow process of the housing production plan and the select board edits. And I'd love to get Christine's input, and then we can open up to discussion a little bit. So we had our joint session, which is so well documented, in the beginning of January. There was specific, and that meeting focused on the housing production plan. You were all there. And very detailed points of feedback were taken. Sharon and team went through, and Karen made those changes in the housing production plan. That was submitted back to the select board, and there's a lot of things I could say. What is productive, and I in terms of, productive in terms of our process. It has been put on and taken off multiple times on and off the agenda. It was off the agenda last week, but was discussed. You can watch that you can watch that video. It does highlight in a pretty factual way, probably where maybe the test case for there's not a great process in place in the town of Harwich right now in terms of technology and software and things like that, to review a document of that size in a, compared to like,
Yeah.
you could offer, there are, in the private or even public sector world, there's a lot of sort of basic technology that supports sort of reviewing and commenting and participating and communing on a document of that size that we do not have in terms of sending back and forth docs, literally doc.
Individually.
Yes. Yeah. Which is, on a process standpoint, is really holding this process back. So, in terms of where we're at right now, the interim chief of the select board, Jeff Handler, they and I, agreed to this process. They have the document. And they would like to edit it amongst themselves take those edits to Christine, that then go back to Karen. And that's sort of the new workflow. There was some thought that it would be on the agenda Monday. It was not. I didn't watch the meeting yesterday. Anyone who did or was in person could jump in. Yeah. Well, Christine, do you have anything to add?
No, I was made aware that it was,
Yeah.
the subject item was removed from the agenda, and so if the new path going forward is for the select board to submit comments to me, that's fine, and we can submit that then to, forward those comments to Karen, and we can work on doing the revisions. Is there any was there any discussion of deadlines?
No, and I'll be
timeframe?
very candid and respectful and professional and thoughtful, and, we live here in our small town. No, I have, as chair of the committee, spoken with members of the select board individually. Speaking generally, and this is actually maybe a good thing to open up to discussion. There are some thoughts about what is in the housing production plan may commit the town to in the future, and those are thoughtful. There were some very specific points of feedback to Karen about, and I'll, again, for the public record, about tax rate and census that Karen very astutely and very quickly responded to, just so you know, so we can all be sort of fact-based if you encounter this socially. The census is accurate in the draft. There's a difference between how the federal census and the local census is calculated in terms of for students and things like that. I mean, so the census is accurate. The tax rate is accurate at the time that Karen was contracted to do the work, and cannot be changed. There's a deep sort of effort of calculations that go into that. So that's sort of what that is. Beyond that, I think the bigger point of discussion that I would sort of like to open up to, we have really experienced folks on the committee, of this idea of, just for the public record, what is in the plan committing the town to going forward. The one, and sort of, in my discussions with the individual select board members, I really emphasized was that we have spent $240,000 of the community's money, and we have spent 2.5 years of our time, which has been very, and most importantly, the town, as you all know, our neighbors really said, thank you for doing this, really showed up for us and participated in a lot of our visioning, and thank you for doing this. We're so grateful, and we've heard over and over again, as we know, please make sure something is done with this. And that is a privilege, and I asked the select board, let us not squander that, because that is really a sacred sort of trust. Yeah, so no, that's a big answer to, there was no sense of a timeline given. So I did want two questions I want to sort of open up to our record here, I think is relevant to us as a committee, is one for our folks with professional experience on the committee in this area, is how binding, quote, binding this housing production plan is in terms of committing the town forward. And then the second thing, please. And then the second thing I wanted to get from you was, I would love for you to articulate for every week or month that this is not adopted, sort of the quote cost to the town. Not in a fear-mongering way, but just understanding the pros and cons.
For the housing production plan, the purpose and intent was really an opportunity for the state to provide planning funds for municipalities to do housing production plans and to really identify what the needs are in their communities, to do the economic profiles, and to set some strategies and goals. It's not binding in any way. As we can see, if you go through the last several iterations of the housing production plans, for many of the communities, of the 81 communities that have an approved housing production plan, out of the 351 municipalities, many communities don't meet those goals that they set. These are, again, goals for the towns to achieve, but they're not binding in any way. And having these documents in play really afford communities the opportunity to leverage state and federal funding that they otherwise would not be eligible to apply for. So this is really an opportunity to support projects and programs like the Marceline property, Bank Street project, as well as other funding opportunities like community development block grants that do housing rehabilitation as well as other economic development programs, not just limited to Harwich, but in what other communities would be eligible for as well. So it's not binding in any way. So I do want to dispel any
I understand, I just wanted you to
any feelings that there's somehow, this is locking the town into obligations to the state. It's not. It's really creating opportunities that that are beneficial to the town. And it's really up to the town to take all of this information, all of the hard work, all of the input, and how we want to implement it, and how do we want to address the housing needs of our community.
Ed?
Yeah, I guess one minor disagreement is the binding part of the plan is the 10%.
But that's for the subsidized housing inventory for the comprehensive permit law. And that is binding for every community in the Commonwealth.
Whether you have an HPP or not.
But if we
right.
don't, whether or not, if the town doesn't meet the 10% threshold, it's still, the town isn't losing anything. It's not threatened to lose anything or committed to doing something.
Is it fair to say there are no penalties if you don't make the 10%? There are just certain opportunities that you don't take advantage of?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the coming up with that, the 10% number is based on basically all the data that has been produced and analyzed by the housing production plan.
But it's still a target.
Yeah, it's still a target.
In terms of
yeah.
potential projects,
Yeah.
yes. And the 10% is based on census data, the decennial census on year-round housing stock.
So does the Board of Selectmen understand this? Unless Joyce.
I will say,
Or are they using
we are
this-
all bear with me for a moment on this. That we are, I think, on this committee, universally good students. And we took this charge seriously and let's put together a good plan. And we have done our best on that plan. And there are forces at play that do not have to do with the quality of this plan.
Okay, so
And
it's
so,
something else.
I want to, as we, and we can't control those, and we have an agenda, and we have work to do of keeping on our task of the production plan, of the comprehensive plan as well. And while holding space, I think, for meaningful debate and different perspective and different input, as we keep marching on, and trying to create a finished product, I would hold in the back of our mind that at some point this may not be about the particulars of the plan or the data points or whether someone's feedback was heard or not, because there are other forces at play.
But with those unstated
Forces,
concerns
yes,
of some
yes.
members of the Board of Selectmen,
Yes.
can we go forward until that has played out independently of whatever?
Yeah, so as I understand it, not in a threatening way, but just exactly how does this work? The housing production plan to be filed with the state does have to be approved by the select board, correct? Yes. Yes, so, yes,
Suggestion.
we can continue to, I have, take this on the, like, yeah, this is why we're talking about it, because we could have other thoughts. It's a bit beyond the personal right now. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I have to say that you did a wonderful job of steering that last discussion, right? And you got
yeah.
things down to item that needed to be resolved.
Yeah,
If this was in the private sector, the way you try to lasso this is to bring those leaders together. They've got to be all together, otherwise you don't have the meeting. And right there, you've got to drive to an answer and drive to agreement, and drive to a vote. And I'm not sure this happens any other way. And I'll tell you what's bothersome is what we heard from the town was,
yes.
don't let
Yes.
this thing die. This
Yes.
is the
Which is exactly, yes.
first example of not doing that.
Correct, correct. And that's the, the particulars of the plan, like, oh, if we got this, of course you want to get it as right, but exactly what you said, that's the thing that wakes me up at 3 a.m., is don't squander that good
But have the-
faith.
with the subject matter
Correct,
experts around the
correct,
table.
correct,
The meeting
correct.
that we had with all those participants last time.
Correct.
We ought to say, March
Correct.
meeting is gonna be, if you can't vote before our meeting in March, we ought to be back together again and force resolving and force a
So-
vote.
It's an interest, no, it's an interesting issue, and, we actually do not have the power to, quote, force anything with the select board.
We're an advisory committee, we're
Right.
not a regulatory committee.
Right.
We're not-
Highly suggested.
Yes, and I'm open to ideas about how to highly suggest, and the pain point may come. I mean, it's beyond, that's what I'm trying to say, that like,
Or do
Can we move forward with the
Maybe we should.
comprehensive plan without the HPP?
yes,
Maybe it should.
yes,
But
yes,
this should give us a clue, if I'm understanding correctly. The HPP is an integral part
Yeah.
as a supplement, a very big
Yes.
supplemental document to the LCP. So if we're finding pushback
yeah,
with this, that's indicators for the LCP
Correct.
overall.
right,
Which the
Right.
LCP is about listening to the voice of the community.
yes, yes,
How we're getting, understanding, maybe the community's voice
correct,
is not priority.
correct.
And I hate to say it that bluntly.
Well, maybe
well
we-
said.
Maybe we should stop until they've made that decision.
So the comprehensive plan can be adopted. It can refer to the HPP, and if that has not been approved, it can be referred to as a draft. Margot, you might tell me otherwise.
I think that's true.
It's true. I don't, and all of this is valid, and we can kind of stay on, and we'll keep on our agenda. I think it's important to talk about this. Two things. I would defer to, Christine and our professional staff about our contractual obligations with Tig and Bond, and in terms of stopping work and timing work and stuff like that. The other thing is, I do not think that the concerns about the HPP are so specific that if that cannot be voted on and adopted, that there's the appetite to adopt the comprehensive plan at town meeting. Now, technically, we could put that on as a warrant, but that doesn't, yeah, what does that accomplish
it's
if you don't have the
So
select
we're
board
basically
support?
dead in the water.
It's not wise to
Correct.
put it on the
Correct.
warrant without the select board's
Correct.
support.
Correct. And I've talked to a lot of you about trying to do everything we can to sort of encourage this.
Yeah, well, I think Brian has got a good point, which is that the selectmen, I still can't get used to using their proper title.
We're not offended by selectmen.
Okay, well,
Don't
the
worry.
select board
Yes.
has a million things on their plate.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
They've got
Yes.
a whole
Yes.
bunch of things going, This is
Yes.
one of those million things.
Yes,
So for them, it probably isn't high priority.
correct.
Okay? And so we are going to have to try to push this a little bit with them, to say, can we meet with you again? Can we, and maybe it doesn't have to be the whole committee. Maybe it could be like a subgroup, that would make it a little, more,
Safer.
Select board, I think it's got to be all of them.
no, the select.
From us.
I'm saying it doesn't have to be all of
All of
us.
us.
I'm open, I'm
but some
open
kind
to
of a
all, I have
working
individually
session.
tried, I would open that, and I have tried, but I would encourage, like, there's a lot of wisdom in this room. So, any thoughts about that?
Well, there's
or-
one other thing that's bothersome here, and this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. When we look at, David's point of the 77 actions and trying to prioritize,
Yeah.
it's really the select board's responsibility to prioritize. And if we can't get over this hump,
Yep,
how do we get over
yep.
vetting?
Yes,
The priorities
correct,
of our
correct.
list.
I've anticipated that, and that have been concerns expressed about this dueling tension of what we have heard, governance and things like that. There have been concerns expressed about that. Well, I'm not going to adopt that because X, Y, and Z, so.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I heard.
I should have told us that 2 years ago.
I know, I heard some back channel feedback that at least a couple of the members of the board were taken aback, that's the polite way to put it, by the governance section, because they, rightly know that it's their job to appoint committees like us, and that it would be their job to appoint a follow-up committee. I don't think they liked being told to.
And I want to
appoint a follow-up
hold space
committee.
for that a little bit, that this is like,
I know, the
correct.
whole thing
And,
is a
we are
recommendation.
fellow members and fellow neighbors, and it makes me think of my father-in-law from East Medford, who was on the school committee for many years there. Like, something called savoir-faire, yes. And there's a way to embody your functional authority as the selectman and also move this forward, and we don't want to, let me tell you, it is not my goal in life to rip regulatory authority from the select board of the town of Harwich, right? So there is a way to handle, do that,
Well, that's-
and kind of meet all this, but, We're not there.
And that's what I said when I heard this, is that it's in no way intended
Correct.
to usurp their authority. What it was intended to do was to lighten their load, to set up a group whose responsibility is.
Governing body,
Yeah.
then go ahead and put another million.
Yeah.
But it was also a response to the community that
Correct,
wanted to.
Yes.
correct. We are not some rogue
Still-
body.
That's still our recommendation.
Yeah.
Now, they may choose not to do it.
Yes.
But that's us.
What does that have to do with the HPP, though?
Oh, it's just the HPP is a symptom of this.
Yeah,
Yes.
it doesn't have
It's
any.
not, we don't even include any mention of
No,
governing
but that's
body.
just the whispering.
We just know that when we get
Correct.
up to it, we're
Correct.
gonna run.
I mean, if
into
you can't approve the HPP, which is
Which is-
92% statistics, then it's gonna be awfully hard to approve the comprehensive plan.
I mean,
Any other back channel stuff besides the governance?
Oh, yeah.
What
Oh,
are-
yeah, all sorts of random
But
stuff thrown
I'm
around.
totally at sea as to what their real objections are. And I don't know if we can talk about it in this type.
Well,
I will.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Ed.
Yeah.
And then Margot will have thoughts too.
I wrote up some notes after the meeting, and particularly focusing on some of the things that Don Howell said, because he was more specific than a lot of the other members. Here they are. We need to stress that the town needs better control over Airbnb rentals, as they can turn into businesses operating in residential neighborhoods. So that was one thing. And that makes the housing shortage worse.
And not to be
I mean,
persnickety
we have
about
stuff
this.
in there about that.
Okay, so this is where it gets hard. Like,
Yeah.
what is enough? And this is when I say there are forces beyond us. I don't know, I'm not gonna you know, but at some point then, what is enough about that? And that's where it's hard, like
Yeah.
the appetite for voting.
I,
That's
you know,
the
I pointed that out to Don.
Yes.
That the housing production plan actually has some very specific recommendations in there about looking at the Great Barrington model for a bylaw.
Right.
You know, that would deal with Airbnb. So, okay, but that's one. A greater stress on redevelopment, recognizing that the town, most of the town is already developed, and that reuse and revitalization is one of the best ways to create some housing, but still protect natural resources. So, again, I think it's already in the plan, but it's just, it's a question of calling it out. There was also.
Sharon, as we try to be productive about this and not get lost in that, one thing that comes to mind is, which you had already always talked about, is the visual pullouts for this kind of stuff and the ultimate design. But
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
Anyway.
I think that works, by the way, I think that works really well in the housing production
so
plan.
we may want
Yeah.
to do visual
Yeah.
pullout, assuming that we are not going to be waylaid by local politics.
Can I just request that we,
Yes.
hear Margot's list?
Yes.
I want to hear Ed's list too.
Go ahead,
All right.
I won't interrupt.
Okay, so the third thing was, if we're going to allow greater housing density in certain locations, we need to make sure that the road infrastructure can handle the additional traffic. And the town will have to commit to making some roadway improvements. That was a specific point. The fourth was that we need to make sure that we've consulted all the town regulatory boards, and we have, but we're circling back on that.
That is an
and we're
update
gonna
item on
talk-
our agenda.
Yeah,
Yep,
we're gonna talk
yep,
about that.
Yep.
And then, there was one other thing that, I talked to Christine about this, and I think maybe this is a misunderstanding, but Don was of the opinion that the town has no informal pre-application review process, and he thought that it was difficult
Yeah,
for
yeah.
developers to be able to know how to comply with the regulations because they weren't allowed to talk to town staff about it. Now, Christine says to me that's not true.
Correct.
That's not true.
Every Thursday at 9 o'clock in this room, we have
Yeah.
community development team meetings.
Yeah,
Amazing.
With, made up of the interim building commissioner, the health director, conservation agent, fire inspector, zoning compliance officer, health director, and myself. And we invite and encourage applicants when they're looking to do any sort of development to come in and talk with us. And it's a very informal opportunity for them to ask
Yeah.
questions of us and for us to ask questions of them. We do ask that they provide a narrative and a site plan so that we have some time to look at it, at what it is they're proposing,
Yeah.
and so that we're all not going into the meeting cold.
Christine, I'm wondering if it would make sense for you to maybe send a little memo to the Board of Selectmen saying, you know, we that you've
There's a concern.
heard that there's a concern about, this issue, and to describe what you are doing now, so that maybe we could just put that one to bed.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I
I'm happy to do
think
that.
John's big beef on that night was about the whole rigmarole that happened with John Carey and the West Harwich Schoolhouse. As you know, they wouldn't let the neighborhood, wouldn't let the water go through, and all these other things, and he basically got shut down for several weeks until people in the town could figure out a way how they were gonna provide water to this guy without costing him like $12,000 or $15,000 or whatever the heck it was and stuff like that. So that's how I took it that night, is that you got somebody trying to do the right thing, and now nobody in town is none of the departments are responding as far as, okay, I've hit this roadblock where the neighbors are letting me go across their property, how do I handle that? It's like, which,
So-
I don't know.
how many times that's gonna happen.
I respect your perspective, and I think we're in this setting to, like, provide some of that feedback. That's not what I heard. And I certainly don't wanna throw the town staff under the bus about that. I thank you for providing that, and totally valid, but
Can we keep-
yes, let's get to
Can
Ed
we
too.
keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm done.
Okay, well,
Governance.
Governance.
listening to them talk, and especially some comments that were made last night, not on this at all, but on
Yeah. State of the Union, so to speak.
a comment that was, they had a new state rep coming in just to introduce herself, and one of the things that she announced was that she's been appointed to the Seasonal Communities Advisory Committee. And the comment was from Pete, was that he said, I'm very interested in that, you know, you have in me the most skeptical of Beacon Hill member of the committee. And I think between that and there's a distinct dislike of 40B. And I know Pete would like to lead a charge on overturning it, but that's really not what this process is about. But, and the fact that the whole process in the housing production plan sort of is based on accepting that as state law, which it is,
Yeah.
is objectionable.
I've heard that too,
Yeah.
that he has that objection.
So-
But, I mean, it's,
Don shares
you
this.
you have to play the hand you're dealt, you know? I mean,
The recording from the 27th, the select board, the last 20 minutes of the meeting is worth watching. I mean, our meeting, our joint session on the 7th, I mean, no meeting is ever perfect, but there was, I think, some meaningful dialogue, there was some meaningful feedback. And I would take issue a bit with how that meeting was referenced on the 27th and how, as a committee, we were
Can you say
referenced.
anything more specifically, or should we just go view it?
Don, yeah, no, you can watch
I
it.
mean, I'd rather-
Don said that the meeting gave him PTSD.
Was it what?
What?
Yeah, said the meeting gave him PTSD.
So our chair was busy trying to move things forward, and he didn't think that you were being gentle enough.
Evidently.
I think there is also,
It's just, in terms of a level of dialogue.
no,
yeah,
I think that there, it's funny, people are, process, I guess, can become very important, and I think there was some confusion around whose meeting is this? And there were a couple of members of their board that felt it was inappropriate for you to be running the meeting because they're the select board, and they're more important than we are.
Right, this is stuff
and-
that's bigger than us and bigger than the
Yeah.
quality of our
Yeah.
report.
So I
Yeah.
think that those are the kinds of things that somehow can mess up,
Yeah.
So we're talking
yeah.
much more form than substance, form, style, whatever. And that's just a matter of improving the communication a little bit somehow. I don't know how you improve the communication. with this
I
stuff.
hesitate that this is a winnable thing. That's why, we gotta keep
Well,
going with it.
If it's not winnable, then we go home.
Yeah, I know.
Right, but
But I was not there
it's a
yet.
democratic vote, it's a democracy too.
As
It's a
far as
vote.
any of the specifics, Margot, on your
Force
list,
vote.
those are all manageable.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I don't think that's, I think Pete does have a concern about state government.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be hard to overcome. But
But-
anything else that you mentioned is all manageable.
But can we word the plan appropriate enough that it fits whatever Pete is looking for?
Let's see.
Because we're not gonna answer every concern in the way we draft the plan. That's why I say you gotta get them together, and you gotta shine the light on this thing until there's a vote.
Yes, and
But it's
yet,
not our
and then,
call.
right, and then the meeting the 7th, that was a joint session, we will get off this now, because we'll
No,
keep
this
going
is
on the
good.
actual tangible stuff in it, but I will, on the record, say a little bit, that meeting on the 7th, it was our meeting time.
Yes.
The chair of the select board agreed to it, the chair of the planning board agreed to it. Julie and I were sitting together, they had their minutes. The Don's quote chair, if we're talking protocol, chain of command, right? Worked on his concerns, some of this is just the state of where we are in terms of
So who was-
town politics.
so-
Nothing went wrong there, I had to go back
I
and do
thought-
that again,
I thought that actually went relatively smooth, like having three different
Yeah,
groups in there.
it's awkward.
It's hard.
Sitting together was really.
We had thought, right, again, assuming the best, but this is stuff that,
So
okay.
was the pushback from the members that were not at the meeting?
Yeah, it's all just kind of, the state of the board.
Sure.
And to also truly hold space for them of, we talked about this, but also, as Margot has said, and I do, the most compassionate sense, they have a tremendous amount before them that is very acute, and they work very hard, and it is a big commitment, but we also.
Yeah, so does everybody who's employed and not employed and in volunteer committees. So, I just think I held my thoughts on it because I'm a little steamed, but I personally think it's a lack of leadership. That's what I think. And I'm going to say that on the record. I just hope we can get through it. From the logistics of it, it sounds fixable. But if there's personal opinion, maybe those are one-on-one conversations.
If I may, just to
Please.
even supplement what Garrett
Please.
just said and whatever, but just taking in, I have a tendency to state the obvious, which kind of just gets me.
It's your superpower, though. It's really good. We need to hear the obvious. It's good.
I see a governing entity, for whatever decisions come in front of them, it's for the greater good of the municipality, not for
Oh,
the individual
totally.
interests. And I do not see that it is being addressed by the select board in this way. And I wanted it on record with just that. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, it's well said.
Just gonna
It's
leave it
well said. And I think we've said it in different ways, just like we're saying, no one
You
wants
know,
the power of the select board.
I've done it. Brian, you brought your private sector comments. My public sector comments are
Please.
that this is so predictable. I mean,
I think you called it from the get-go.
there's turf, there's, misunderstandings. I mean, just act like you're a developer in front of the planning board and take all your lumps and then come back again next time and get your permit. So what I'm trying to say is, there's nothing here. We should not be defensive,
Agreed.
including the way you ran that meeting. We should feel good about all the work we put into this, but it may take a little while to get through this.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think it's all valid, it's all valid, and, we can focus on working on our plan, which is actually our work, and I don't have a mechanism, I don't think we have a mechanism at hand to force a vote on the housing production plan, and I don't have a sense whether the comprehensive plan is gonna make it to the warrant. And there are,
Not in May.
and there are implications beyond that in terms of cost and time and things like that, but
I think May is virtually dead, in my opinion. I think it would be wonderful if it's possible to have a special fall town meeting, partly because we're not sharing it with all the money items. The town doesn't always like to do the special town meetings.
it sounds
But-
expensive. Fiscal
Well,
conservative in me is bothered by that, but okay.
But it's
think
not,
it would be a
they
much better time.
they often have a fall town meeting anyway.
Okay.
It's not at all uncommon to have a fall town
But
meeting.
even saying
So-
that, it's always tough to move a deadline back, because then you just sort of relax, and then you
Then
miss the
nobody
next-
does
Then you
anything.
miss the next deadline. What I think is crucial is for the Board of Selectmen to give us a list of what their concerns are. They want to work through and edit on their own. Can we in any way give them a time? Yeah, you're shaking your head, Brian, but
I would say that's like a spiral.
if we say,
Chasing your tail.
So
We waited a couple years.
so
Can
this,
we put a timeline
this has
on
all
that?
been very, very useful, and it's great to have everybody here and do it. So, the housing production plan, let's this is a testing of this work process, as everyone's
Yeah.
talked about this
Learning.
process. Let's see, we still have work to do, which I think we can dig in, but I think everyone's on the same page and heard it all, because there's been a lot going on in the last 30 days.
Statement we can make, though, is, or do we just need to
think it's
roll
been-
over and we're just an advisory committee? And I sincerely
Yeah.
wonder, Joyce, if there's something that you can say back to the select board, that we all are very concerned, and we're unanimous in our concern, right? And we're concerned that if they can't get past this, not a threat, but
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
can't get past this hurdle, how could they possibly digest and prioritize the LCP, which is what the community is expecting?
And also what we
To do with
spent,
what we deliver.
what we
So-
also spent money on.
Right, and I think I would paint it in the picture of this is what the community's expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And we as a committee are very concerned that if we can't get past this very first hurdle, that we're never gonna get past the prioritization, the digestion and the prioritization of the LCP. And at that point, we've failed the community.
I think that is all, but you've said it
No, I just
beautifully. No,
wonder
you
if you-
said it beautifully, Brian. I think that hopefully this first 40 minutes of this meeting will be watched.
I hope so too, but if
Yeah,
not,
because it's
can
said
we-
unanimously.
And
Oh,
if
okay.
not, perhaps draft a letter, and it's from the
Okay.
entire committee, just to have it in writing.
As energetic as we've been for as long as we've been together, this is, it just pops the balloon.
Yeah.
If we can
Yeah.
say, we really want to hear back from you by February 15th, February 28th, I don't know, with whatever comments you have, so we can proceed with this.
I think
If we can give them a time.
we're out
If
of
we
it
can
a
then
little bit
say-
with the HPP.
But if we can make that sort of request and then say, we're happy to come to your meeting to discuss this, I think we should indicate that we're moving forward, but ask for their input within a certain period of time.
I think David's right. I think that's a good idea.
To make a
Are
move.
we able to do that through you, Christine?
We support you, Christine. We got you.
Through a chair or through you?
It seems like I'm employed by the
It's part
select.
of your bailiwick, and
Yeah.
I just didn't know how much
Absolutely,
you
I'd
were
love-
still in.
We got your back, Christine.
I thought, you know, is it that a town department is still in talks with them?
I think it would be more appropriate coming from the chair
Chair
Chair.
and us, yeah.
to
Every one
another,
of us is saying.
because they've appointed this body, and I think it would be more appropriate coming from them.
I thought that you were still talking
Yeah.
with them about this on a professional level.
Guess that's
They
what-
would
But
like,
if
yeah.
they, but I do
Yeah.
think asking for a deadline and maybe copying me and saying if you have any comments or questions regarding some of the guidelines or some of the requirements from the state or clarifications, it might be an opportunity for them to also reach out to me for any technical clarifications.
Maybe a way to frame this would be in the context of our contract with Tie and Bond. Because
I brought that
I-
up to you before.
I assume that we're running out of monies.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We just got some, but.
Just,
We got a new slush fund.
Hopefully it's not a slush fund, but
No, big slush.
Sharon would like to be
I'm
done with
trying
this as well.
Congrats, you get a clam
resemble
bake this
that
summer.
remark.
Yeah.
It's a slushy time of year, but we did just receive an extension to our contract to June 30th.
Okay.
All right, and we did receive an amendment of
Okay.
$40,000 to complete the plan within that time frame.
Okay,
So,
Was there a
I mean,
year
I
for
think,
that?
I think that's a great idea.
Plus a year option.
But if I may, what Margot's saying is I myself went back to the contract, the original contracts for the HPP and for the LCP. Because as a vendor, what you do is you have this, what were the deliverables? Did they bring the deliverables? Yes, they did. You
Yeah.
paid for X.
yeah.
So they brought the deliverables that you asked for.
Mm-hmm.
From that perspective.
I love taking advantage of the expertise in the room. David, I really appreciate what you said, that this is very predictable, and it's great to have all this perspective, because nobody has to take it personal, it just is what it is, it's okay to be annoyed, but yeah, it is, nothing has gone wrong here, it's just town politics. If you look at the date, February 4th, today's the 4th, what is in this context, what's a date? But we would, housing production plan.
When's the next time they meet, I guess? Is that?
What's a date when you look at this that seems reasonable?
to get their feedback?
Yeah. Even though we're sort of out of it, like, we're asking respectfully, because they have
2 weeks.
2 weeks, they have asked for this workflow to be between them, Christine, and T&B, and we are, okay.
Christine,
But we're
what-
also
what-
trying to add some street cred to that.
What do you think is a reasonable
I
timeframe?
think 2 weeks
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Yeah,
is
okay.
appropriate.
Okay, so the 18th.
And this is not,
Yeah,
I think it's important to frame this, it's like, this is not a deadline. We can't set deadlines for
Correct.
them.
It's a request.
This is, it's a request that, can we,
Receive your feedback. by
yeah,
the
yeah,
18th.
please, yeah.
In order to meet the
I would actually even say, okay, would I even,
Springtown meeting.
could I even say, and we're talking, just to clarify here, just about the housing production plan?
At this point, yeah.
And
But we also,
Could we-
also want to ask them,
I would, maybe, I want to ask about how,
yeah, how are we going to
take
move
this to
forward?
a vote, because we met on January 7th. This quote red line document, like the most updated version of the housing production plan, has been in play. I'm gonna misquote it, but I quoted it correctly in emails to them since like the 10th of January. So we're approaching a month for that. So I wanna ask, is it to be a little more aggressive, a vote?
However,
Because feedback is indefinite.
President.
2 weeks from now is
President's-
President's Day, they won't be meeting, they'll have their meeting on the 18th, and I think I've already heard from listening to some of the
Right.
meetings that Pete at least will not be available that week.
It's a majority vote from the select board.
Yeah, no, and I thought I heard something from 2 of them, but, because I forget what else was being batted around, but it was something, and I could be wrong about that, so.
Quorum is a 3 on that?
3.
3?
Yeah.
Well, they wanted a 5-0
Yeah,
vote
but
on
Yeah,
it.
they
I'm
want a
not
5-0.
sure.
But
if
not,
I'm-
well,
I'm not sure.
we don't have a vote.
I think I'm remembering a discussion at
Okay.
a meeting where a couple of them said, they were talking about some date for something that fell in that week, and there were
Okay.
2 of them, I shouldn't just be
Okay.
mentioning Pete without mentioning.
No.
Michael
Is there,
said,
but
I
is
don't
there
know
a
if I
sense,
can be-
when we look at how long this has been kicking around, is it appropriate to, in this respectfully suggesting, town appointed, can't tell you to do it, I'm not the boss of them, but just for an effort of all of this,
what's your
to
vote,
ask for a vote within that, are we, no?
That's not what I was,
No,
You don't think that, you think that's too
I
aggressive?
think that's pushy.
Okay, all right, I won't be pushy.
and I was only suggesting that maybe we'd be better off pushing it to the next week and saying by February 25th.
3 more weeks of feedback? I mean,
no,
now
I
it
know.
just, but if that's okay,
But
I'm
it's taking-
asking, that's what I'm
If
asking.
it's taking this long already,
I mean, you may not get a vote for another,
Anything.
Why don't we ask them to get their feedback to us? If they're meeting on the 18th, on the 19th, and we can add to it, we understand that this may be a scheduling issue, but if not, then certainly by the following
Isn't the
week.
feedback individual, though? I thought they were individually redlining it, so why don't we
but
just,
they still have to.
they have to get
Talk
together
about
They
it
have to
together.
get a consensus
on their red
so
line?
that they'll be able to vote it.
And,
Keep not putting it on the agenda,
that is
so-
part of the problem here,
Yeah.
is that they don't agree among themselves
And
about,
keep kicking the can.
yeah.
You know, it's 3 votes.
Yeah,
Yep.
We need to do, quite honestly, we might just need to figure out which is
there have been
the
efforts
one
at that.
of the-
There have been efforts.
Right, and that's what I'm saying,
that
it's
we can
obviously
cut from the
things that come down.
undecided pack. Is there are 2 that I think are ready to vote for it.
So, David, but if I understand you correctly, and I respect the propriety of this process, it would be overly aggressive to ask for a vote. We should be asking for feedback.
Yeah.
Well, given who we're dealing with and I mean, we've got probably 2 votes. We've got 3 members who have reservations, one of whom should vote for this plan. And, he's given us the most comments so far.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how to overcome Pete's not wanting Big Brother to tell him what to do. I know some of Mike McCaskill's historic concerns. I think those are the 2 that have the biggest concerns. So I'd like to hear them say what they're concerned with
So
and
we
then
can cover
respond.
it. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's the most important feedback, were the ones we didn't hear in the meeting, right? That's probably the I mean, honestly, I don't even know if we need a ton from the others, because I feel like they
They
shared.
attended, they were here.
Yeah, and we have it documented, written down, I
If
feel
we
like.
could, let's say, you know, we know that you are 5 individual members, we would like to understand, get a basic idea of what each of you find objectionable. It can be a general statement, or it can be a list. And just try to get each of the 5 of them. And then I think we can know what to do.
My one hesitation, and of course, if, we're powerless over this anyway, my hesitation is we're sort of in this doom spiral of feedback. And until there's some pain point of adopting it.
That's
you
why
know.
I was saying 2
Go ahead,
weeks,
Christine.
get some feedback.
No, but if we get feedback, at least we make the effort and it's given back presented to them, and hopefully it's in a manner that they can then take
Digest.
It sets
action,
up a
up or down.
collaborative environment. That's what we're
right,
really
right.
seeking.
Yeah, yes, I'm not sure we
Or
haven't,
not.
we're not sure we haven't been there, but
I was
this
gonna
is the
say, I think
age-old.
that started January 7th.
Yes, yes,
That's what's so
yes.
frustrating.
We have to do it over and over, I
Okay,
think.
all right, I got
That's
you.
what you're saying.
The 18th feedback, and Pushy Broad over here will
Give
back
us
off on
what you
taking
can.
a vote.
Or the 25th.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And if not,
If not,
we
ne-
can do no more. We are doing our due diligence, and we'll
We're
turn our
done-
attention
we're
to
done.
other parts of the plan.
Yeah.
have to put a paperclip on our plan, and we're done.
And they wonder why people don't volunteer for committees.
And, you know, to keep, I guess, pressure on, it might be good if we make sure that there's a placeholder warrant article submitted by
Yeah.
the 14th of February, putting the local comprehensive plan approval
Yeah.
on the ballot.
On the
Love
ballot.
it.
On the
We have-
warrant, on the warrant.
That
I
keeps
have
it.
talked with our administration to reserve a warrant article for the LCP, because Sharon and I have met with administration. We have a contractual deadline for the annual town meeting for May 2025 for the LCP. So that is the
it has to be on
deadline,
there.
so.
So maybe reference that lightly in the
Okay,
note.
it's all good.
Joyce, thank you for everything.
No, it's all good. I appreciate all your guys' wisdom. I'm learning a lot. It's good. No, we need all of us.
The fact that we've gotten all this negative feedback, and we've got 9 of us coming here on a cold February, that's pretty good for us, too.
If you're not making trouble, you're not accomplishing anything.
Hour of our time.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So we've got agenda items that we can do
It
some.
needed to be aired out, though.
All right,
Oh,
that's
it
good.
absolutely
We're all on the
is.
same
It
page.
absolutely is.
Onwards. All right, can we get some update on our regulatory committee outreaches? Because I bless you all, I'm equally grateful for all of you guys, because you guys took on that, and then there was, like, the website was down, and some of our meetings were rescheduled, and I
Yeah.
couldn't totally follow the dates, but I know some of you did follow the dates, so.
Christina and I were supposed to meet with the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission last week, but both those meetings got canceled because of the website snafu. So we are meeting with the Conservation Commission to talk about the open space and recreation plan tomorrow night. And we have a agenda for the Board of Health on the 20th. So, you know, and these are really, I mean, David met with the Board of Health last year, but this is circling back.
Yep.
And,
It needs to be done.
you know, so that's what,
I'd like to also go along with the Board of Health.
okay, great. I think the more the merrier.
And Ed and David also met with the Water and Wastewater Commission
Yes.
the other 2
Tell
weeks
us,
ago.
tell us all about it. Let's get some updates from Doreen and Lorraine.
Well, it was.
Thank you for going.
Wasn't really terribly critical of anything. They have,
Cordial, in fact.
yeah, somewhat cordial.
There were factual
Yeah,
corrections.
great.
Yeah, there's
That's
some
wonderful.
factual questions. They believe that they have sufficient water, and so the questioning of that in it, I don't know, I forget where, there's this statement about
I think that got
Water
changed, I think that
shortages,
got
yeah,
changed
yeah,
pretty quickly.
yeah,
Noreen was
yeah.
awesome about providing feedback very
So,
quickly in real time.
That was
Yep.
their
Okay.
big issue, so it went fairly well.
Yeah, and I think just for the record, that Noreen's point was that the way water supply is calculated, like, though we're of course very respectful of our water resources and things like that, municipal water availability should not be used to limit housing development. Is that the way of
Yeah,
putting it?
I think so, pretty much.
Thank you both for going. Appreciative. Okay.
And then the other one that I haven't actually met with, but I ran into a couple of members on Saturday at the Democratic Town Committee meeting, is the Energy Committee. And I sent them, the two members there, a copy of the goals, objectives, actions, and I got a note just as been sitting here back from Valdell that she would like me and whoever else to be at their meeting on the 13th,
Amazing.
and I'll attend to take their input.
Thank you.
Speaking of the Democratic Committee, Rick Gottwald got in touch with me and asked if I could give them an update on the LCP at either the March or April meetings. And I told him that things were a bit in flux at the moment. And so before scheduling anything, I wanted to have a better sense of where things stand. So I haven't scheduled anything, so.
And I gave them an update on where we are in terms of approvals and our plans of having community, public meetings, public hearings
Yeah.
on the plan.
Yep.
So,
Okay. All right.
And Bernadette, lovely, thank you for bringing it to, took the plan to, well, you tell us.
I tried to get feedback from like the cultural council members and from the library board, but not much there, and then it was like, well, duh, I go into cultural affairs, and so I sat down with Kara Moeni a couple weeks ago, and what I had done was I went through, and from the vision statement through to the cultural heritage part, I kind of just went through and extrapolated and highlighted things that I thought pertained to the cultural districts, to the cultural affairs department, to any of that. And then she went and reviewed it when we met, and she reviewed it all, and she gave it back to me with, very little input, but some important input in some places. Even things like parts where in transportation or something, it was mentioning shuttles in the summer in Harwich Port, and that was something that was brought up in our audit with MCC to become districts, that, that might be a necessary thing. So I think it impacts cultural affairs, and cultural affairs has something to do with that kind of thing in Harwich Port. But I sent it to Joyce, and she can share it.
I sent it to Sharon.
Whoever, and, share it with the rest if you want. So the yellow was things I highlighted that I thought she should look at.
When was that sent? I'm sorry.
I just sent it tonight.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh,
Don't worry,
okay.
and this is, I would say
see,
this
did I
is
miss
like
something?
sort of normal process stuff. We've been talking about a lot of drama. This is like normal process stuff that I just sent to you.
It's not one of the regulatory
Yeah.
bodies, but it was just another stakeholder area that I
Great.
just, didn't dawn on me to do that, because she's like a 1.5 person staff over there, but. So when you do see it, Sharon,
I
the
do,
yellow
yeah.
things were what I highlighted to bring to her attention, so she didn't have to slog through the whole
Okay.
draft. But there are some things, like I said, that might not seem obvious, but that I knew were pertinent, like the shuttle system for Harwich Port, because it's one of the cultural districts. And then there was just one or two parts marked in red where she came back with it.
I
There
see.
was, and one of it was in when you're describing either the different villages and the things in them, and there was a big thing about the library, a big thing about the community center, and not much about the 204. So she definitely put her little,
Which is great.
plug in there
That's
for
what
that.
we need. This is the
Because it's
community's
mentioned-
plan.
Mentioned
Yes.
very positively, but only mentioned,
Yep.
And should probably have had at least a little meatier description, as did the community center and those.
Great.
And that's
We agree. We've been saying that all
Yeah.
along, so credit to her for doing it.
Really low on the totem pole thing compared to everything else we're.
No, no, but this is actually the work of
It's
this
another little
committee. This
piece of
is
the
the real,
puzzle.
yeah, thank you.
There I have it, thanks.
One other thing that just, I forgot about until I was listening to Bernadette. The Real Estate and Open Space Committee had a discussion of the open space plan. And the chairman of the committee, Dave Callahan, did a really thorough review of it.
Amazing.
And, I mean, read it cover to cover.
I love
and
that. Thank
gave
you.
a whole list of just suggested corrections in it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I was really happy to have his
And you,
input.
of course, passed it on.
I passed it on to Erica and to Christine.
Perfect.
So I hope those changes will get incorporated, because I think Dave was right about it. He used to be the president of the Great Sand Lakes Association, and so some of the information about Great Sand Lakes in there was not quite right, and he was just trying to correct that.
We had gotten some really great community feedback about open space and recreation. Some people had read it in detail, and we've passed those on. So, I mean, I think that's all working
Yeah.
the way it's supposed to be working, which is really good.
Yeah.
I think we've covered our regulatory committee outreaches. Sharon, could you, the local comprehensive plan, we've talked about a lot, we've touched on a lot of the pieces of the agenda by talking about this thorough conversation. If you want to just kind of give us a little update review globally, we've talked about some of our more granular issues, and then I thought we would go on into David's document in E, and we should also, Ed has provided some specific, these are your,
Yeah.
like, track, and Sharon has these?
Yeah.
We've got some Ed line items. I don't think any of these are controversial, you know. Do we need to talk about yours, Ed? We
No,
just check that off the list.
A lot of the editing is basically to give a little bit more intentionality.
Yeah,
about
thank you.
Some of the subjects.
It's all really important, thank you.
Tree warden shouldn't just be about preserving trees, but also developing a planting program to expand, you know, things like that.
This is great.
Yeah.
This is really good stuff. So, Sharon, and then we can dig into E.
Okay. Well, so since we last met, I have not made substantial changes or updates to the draft plan. I did incorporate language that Ed sent on the introduction to the, I believe it was, land use section, talking about the Native American.
Yeah, the
So
settlement
that's been
history,
updated.
yeah,
So that's been updated. I haven't made any changes reflective of the select board's comments yet. It seemed like that would require some more discussions. They were kind of ranging from the vision statement to other types of items. Christine and I did meet to discuss the capital infrastructure and facilities plan, and I sent her a template to work from and populated that with some projects that I was able to pull out from the plan itself that are recommended as a starting point. And Christine was going to review that with the town administrator. So that work is underway, which is a big piece of the plan yet to be completed. And I would say your focus for the next several weeks or few weeks should be on the action plan and the implementation, like priorities, if you're going to prioritize. I sent you a separate document
Yep.
that just has the goal, the goal, the actions, and then it has some columns that are all blank. So it's like, something to workshop amongst the committee.
And just a technical question about that. You put that in a Excel
Excel,
spreadsheet,
sorry,
which I see
Excel.
that, which I love that. And if I understood correctly, I didn't cross-check. This is the language that's currently in the Word doc, right?
Yes, it is.
It's just broken out in a more
Yes, it's taken.
Excel way. Yeah,
It's
got it.
taken right
Okay.
out of.
Good, I'm
right
glad
out
I
of the
understood
Word
that
doc.
correctly.
Should be the
Yeah.
same.
Yep.
I'm sorry, yeah, it wasn't Excel.
No, yeah.
So that's something, for discussion for, for you to roll up
Okay.
your sleeves and work on, and happy to, take things in any order that you
Okay.
like.
David, and then you, I so appreciate everyone being an adult and taking on their own responsibility of work. It's lovely, thank you. David, do you want to tell us about what you put together? Which was posted, I believe, as part of our agenda, so that's
Yes.
part of
Yeah.
the public record, no secrets here.
I started to go through and do edits on the plan, and I pretty much gave up, just because my brain works differently somehow. So I've wanted for a long time to try to be more targeted, and all I could come up with, and Sharon, I don't know if there's a way to fit this in or not, but I tried to hit, I think housing, as I've said all along, is what's going to most affect what our community is going to be like and whether we have a well-rounded community. So I focused on housing. And I've tried to say what I think are the priorities. The only trouble is it doesn't fit the current format of the plan, and I don't know what to do about it.
But we can have our own, we can have a little pop-out
Well, okay.
section.
But I do want to point out that Don Howell is represented in item 1, maximize use of existing properties. He's represented in item 2D, which is further action may be needed for public infrastructure, including the town roadway network. I mean, I got to say that Don Howell's various comments throughout our process have probably influenced my thinking as much as anybody. I also got a couple of Ed McManus in here.
Nice, nice.
On Harwich Center, and also on the importance of the money. And I've suggested ways to maximize funding sources in item 3.
Could you tell us how, in terms of the language that you pulled out of here and related to like Karen's Excel sheet, or like, was this kind of stuff that you thematicized, so to speak, out of the actual existing document, or is this David Spitz language, or what?
It's more David Spitz language than what Sharon has given us.
Okay.
That's the problem. But what it does is it synthesizes the input that we've gotten from the public for months. So, again, I don't know if and how we use it. But to me, these are some of the most important points.
May I comment?
Please,
And as
that's
far
what we're,
as-
this is our agenda item, yeah.
As far as what David was alluding to, as far as the form, as far as the current form, where, as I'm pulling from David, that he's looking at it, relating it back to the community for how, their language. He's speaking in their language, as is, if we have it in the structure of natural systems, community systems, that, I don't know if that's relatable in a priority listing to the community. So if we can restructure those areas so it can have a direct link, a direct line back to how the community said, this is a priority, as opposed to putting in those categorical natural systems. Is that close to anything of what you're, you know?
You often
does
frame
that-
things very well.
But again, when I look at natural systems, I have no idea what natural systems is. And as a
But
member of the community,
this gets to this is like the form we have given, a little bit like when you write your collegiate thesis, right? So,
yeah.
You
and
do
it-
not have to stick with that form. It's just a way to make sure all the information is out there. You can,
As a
you can
data
devise
point.
your own
Yeah.
format, whatever works best for.
As a data point, I appreciate that, but as a community-based document, it'd be nice to, if that's our audience, to be able to structure it more in that format, like it might be.
it's very valid. I hear you. I don't know, gets to the discussion of who reads it. I would note that point and then go to Ed. Like, yeah.
Well, I just looked at David's sheet of his things, and he and I mentioned a lot of the same things. He did it in the language he's comfortable in writing, and I tried to do it in the language which was the way the LCP draft is done, and I found it very difficult to make coherent little statements, trying to get a point across.
So knowing that it's really hard, it's a really dense document,
Yeah.
it's really hard to read, Sharon, is there a way, and I mean, we could go through these points here, is there a way to kind of do it visually? Wanting to do all the things, like, we know it's in there. You guys have pulled it out in different ways. We're highlighting it. Margot's spoken so eloquently about trying to, like, highlight it for the select board and things like that. We've talked about executive summaries from our private sector friends, like, what's the way to do this?
The executive summary was gonna be my first suggestion, is that's a good way to, like, right up front, and that will be in the front of the document, to say what the priorities of the LCP are, which is, you know, so it may be this list, there may be more things, but to have that right up front and center in the document is one way to handle it.
Do you guys ever do like an executive summary via like infographic?
Sure.
No?
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like,
yeah.
it's almost like you're following the path, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, sure. I
Visually.
mean, we can do anything you want. I mean, we, like, anything that works best for you, if you have an idea of how you'd like to portray it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a designer that's waiting and anxious
really?
to do, he's started the layout of the plan, but we're waiting.
We're
until-
mired in.
Well,
We're in
waiting
mud.
until you're ready to, you know, to bring that forward, in a format that's, you know, gonna help, hopefully get the plan passed. Yeah.
It seems to me that, I think there's a lot of great stuff. We're just looking at the housing page, but there's also a community design section. And when I read through this, I thought, you know, this is a level of detail on actions that the selectmen were kind of asking us for. And so just to stitch it in to, you know, the actions in the housing section.
But one thing is, I don't know if they're gonna read it, so I would even propose the other thing, because, I mean, David did pull this out of thin air, you know, I mean, he's saying the same thing in the different ways. I think this is in some of the actions. I don't know that they're reading it, but, so I would even say, could we there's consensus to try to take this as a draft of an executive summary, and then start to.
Well, I think, you know, there's certainly overlap in here between what we already have in the plan and this, but one of the things that's in here that maybe isn't as much called out in the plan is looking at the, you know, the individual neighborhoods and really trying to, you know, do follow-up studies in those villages that are unique to those villages. And I think that's certainly something that Don wanted, and I think other people would support that as well. So I guess, Sharon, let me ask you a question. I mean, how hard do you think it would be to just sit down with the two sections side by side and combine them?
Which two sections?
What David has written
Oh.
in his housing summary and the housing objectives and actions that we already have in the plan.
I don't think that would be very difficult. I mean, I think it is, I think many of them are there. They are worded differently, a little bit differently. If these are the two areas that you want to focus on, I don't know if there are more, you know, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's this is only two sections of the plan.
Right.
But arguably, the housing in particular is an area where there seems to be a tremendous lot of focus.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, and I mean, I think we could, you know, like, I'm just looking at some of this stuff, you know, about the community design and stuff, like, we have, I think, David, you did an amazing job of kind of both things, of adding some detail, but also like saying it kind of in an executive summary, like when I say, you know, continue to explore parking and transit options to serve seasonal demand, like in Harwich Park, community design parties. I mean, I know in the action plan, we've got tons of detail about that, you know? So maybe yes, and what Margot is asking is, can we integrate some of the housing stuff and the village stuff in, into the action plan? I think, David, you've made a big draft here about what starts as an executive summary.
Just to restate what I was trying to do. I've always felt that our housing production plan was too much, that it was really hard to pick priorities out of there. So this is more from my own knowledge of this community, plus listening for the last 2 years, and trying to pick out those things I thought were most important. I did try to be aware of some of the strategies Karen was giving us, but I think the housing we really need to present carefully. And my only other idea on here was, you know, we don't have 7 equal villages, and I really felt we needed to say a little bit more about our big villages, our little villages, so that was the purpose of that page. As far as the whole rest of the document, I don't have anything. I'm happy enough with the whole natural resources stuff to let it stay, follow the comment, but I want to be a little more specific on villages, and I think we need to be more precise about housing, whether it's this format or whatever combined format we come up with. And I think we need to address at least one and maybe more of the select board members on that very topic.
So, okay, so knowing we're gonna have an executive summary, if we take this housing priorities section here, would this be, we can make it whatever we want. I would pose the question, if you take these priorities, which we can go through and I think are pretty reasonable, make sure they're inclusive, would that lead the housing production plan? Would that be the executive summary of the housing production plan? How would you like to highlight this as the priorities?
For me, it's in the comprehensive plan, the LCP, not the housing production.
Yeah,
Okay.
And there is a summary of the housing production plan in the LCP.
yeah, there's,
And there's a table at the end that, yeah, Karen
So-
provided.
And it's at the end, it's a massive document, yeah. I mean, we
I mean,
can,
it's still, even the summary is still
we can
lengthy.
repeat ourselves.
Mhm.
Can we? And I totally understand what you're saying, David. We may get lost more in the muck as we fight out with the HPP because they don't have the comprehensive plan, but that, we're just talking ourselves in circles. But could we take these priorities and make it part of an executive summary?
Of the LCP or the housing production plan?
I guess, since you said you wanted it in the LCP,
To me, you know, we've got a state-mandated housing production plan. You know, that's a very technical document with some conclusions. Let's leave that as is.
Okay.
And let's
Okay.
tell at least one of our concerned select board members that now we're adopting this very much to Harwich, and we're doing it in the LCP.
right.
Okay.
It's all that way.
So it sounds like Sharon can very, excuse me, very easily, what you have said is not out of the ether here in these priorities 1 through 4. Make sure that they are in the actions of this very dense document. I know they're there. Can we go through these point by point with the idea that this would be in the executive summary?
Right, wait a minute.
Okay.
I think we need to make sure that the executive summary says the same thing as what the main plan says.
Yes.
Yeah, so it seems like incorporating them into the housing section of the plan would be the first step.
Correct, and that's what
Yes.
she was
Yeah.
just saying, it's not so
Yeah.
hard to do. So I am
Okay.
I am 100% concurring with
Okay.
you about that. With the idea that these would then be pulled out to the executive summary.
I'm good with that, but I think you'd also want to just make sure that
There were other
there aren't other things that should also be,
Yeah.
you know,
It should
included.
be, the executive summary should be balanced. It
Inclusive.
should.
Yes.
It should,
Yeah.
so.
Well, this could be a draft. This is what I'm saying. This may be first step, is what I'm trying to acknowledge. This would be the first step. Can we go through, David, would you like to take us through them so that we can just make sure we're all, I don't think there was anything controversial here, but consensus?
What do I want to say about any of these? I agree with some board of selectmen members that we don't need to develop new as much as we need to make use of what we've already got. So that's what number one is all about.
Love it.
And there are various ways to do that.
Yep.
Helping people stay in their homes, people who are renting, strengthen those things. And very big is conversions, not just on ADUs, but from commercial to residential. So it's 3 different ways of maximizing use of existing properties.
I love, that's why I'm kind of pushing on this executive summary thing, you know, and then Sharon's gonna make sure that the sentiments are correct in the actions, but I think that's what actually people are gonna read. And so Mary's point of like language that people understand, what you've put here is language that people understand. Good job.
That's what I'm. Point number 2 is allow density increases, but target them. Now, I think, you know, Christine pointed out to me that we had a new 2020 zoning provision that allows multifamily using, which essentially doesn't limit density. It says according to whatever the planning board feels can be on the site. Well, that's great for producing more housing, but it doesn't reach any of our town goals. So I'd love to see the town take that sort of section. I haven't said it here, but, you know, that accomplished town housing goals is the key. If we're going to give more density, make sure that it's accomplishing the things that we think are needed. So provide for.
Said it, allow density that increases accomplished housing, town housing goals. It's great, yeah.
A wide range of income, affordable and attainable, using Ed's attainable language. That should have some convincing on, again, I'm presuming at least one of our select board members who has a lot of concern about affordable, but has much less concerns about attainable. We need both. I've said all along, we need to emphasize certain locations. Walkable villages, public transportation, avoid sensitive lands. And I've said where I think that works. A range of tools should be considered. Okay. So predicting that all the neighbors are going to come into wherever a housing project is proposed, consider neighborhood character and townwide carrying capacity. So this is all under, we want to allow density increases, but these are the things that go along with it. The third most important category is maximize funding sources, and I may have missed a few. But B, somebody said at some point, you know, CPA funds, you know, we've been great on conservation. Well, maybe we need to be a little greater for the time being on housing. So that's what that's trying to get at. C gets it a little more into the weeds. Increase in transfer taxes. Payments in lieu of inclusionary zoning, just to translate what that one is. A lot of places say, do inclusionary zoning, but what you really want is money from it. So when the developers don't want to put that affordable house in their development, then have them pay enough money to help do it somewhere else. Now, somebody at this table's husband said this inclusionary zoning idea isn't going to fly, but I think it's good enough. I don't know who that was.
He's not the boss of you either, Bernadette.
Houses too, yeah.
I'm just throwing that out. Because again, that was the input we got at one of our hearings, was this unnamed person saying, oh, that'll never fly. But my point is, that is a money source. Now, I think I'm probably missing some of the money sources that we should be considering. But
But when you say something like maximize funding sources, so, and this was just for the discussion format, because these are amazing things, and I just now I'm getting like paranoid about this. You know, maximize funding sources, and you give examples, and then Ed's thoughts have always been like, don't be too specific, because then it's going to get shot down, right? So maximizing funding sources is like very inclusionary language. And
so we might have a better way to qualify that.
No, I think it's good, is what I'm saying, and you're giving 2 suggestions, and then I know we've done so much work in the action plan, we really nailed down a lot of that language to be inclusive, to give precision, this is what we think, but also, you know, like we suggested, I'm using this just as a simple example, suggest a tree warden, you know, understand, or, you know, consider a tree warden, not saying that you have to have it, understand there's pros and cons. So I think you're accomplishing that. I wonder, just, you know, well, if stuff gets thrown out, I mean, I think you've done a good job of saying
Sort of
a general idea with some specific examples.
a little bit of background on the Affordable Housing and Seasonal Communities Act.
Oh, yeah.
was one of the items that didn't make it through that process was the increase in transfer taxes for the mega houses.
Well, maybe that's not the right example.
And there's an effort statewide to round up all of the seasonal communities that qualify here in the Berkshires to all put on their town meeting warrants, local option, local initiative request for the authority to do transfer taxes to help them get that passed in the coming season.
Interesting. Well, no. When the land bank was first passed, and then this was carried on through the Community Preservation Act, the original version was a real estate transfer tax, and it went down in flames.
Yeah.
So when they came back with a new bill, it's a surcharge on the property tax. So it doesn't trigger by buying and selling property. It triggers all of us pay an increment on our property taxes, every year.
But Nantucket has one of these
Yes.
real estate, right?
Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard both do.
Yes.
Yeah,
I've heard some communities out west have started to do that. as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
The real estate community has generally opposed it. And so,
Do you have a point of view? I mean,
on that,
do you want to make one, or maybe it's just a consider?
I think it's definitely worth considering. I will point out that it's a political hot potato.
Yeah.
I guess what I would suggest is, I think the maximized funding sources is important. I would defer to Ed, Margot, or anybody else here, if you have some more specific knowledge as to better examples to put in review.
I don't, but Christine might and Ed might.
Again, I look at it, it's one of those things, and we're not gonna know until we throw it against the wall, and it depends how much anybody's gonna read it in detail. Like, explore, assuming the best of everyone in the process, all you say is explore funding options related to the use of, it's like the tree warden, we're just saying, think about it, it may not be
Recognize
the,
these are desperate times.
it may not be the right thing. How dare you
No
say?
stone unturned.
Yes, right.
Well, two of the areas on the list that I get, the last one, page 4-13, those three are all connected to Harwich becoming a seasonal community. There are two actions that we need to take. One, provide for small homes, tiny homes to be sited, and the other one is regulations and procedures to permit the merging of small parcels to create buildable lots.
Yeah.
And then the other whole area,
Allowing,
the
merging.
seasonal communities thing also has, opens up some funding,
Yeah.
to maximize funding. The other area that maximizes funding is in going from being simply a green community, which we are, to be a climate leader green community, which is the next step up that they have.
So what I hear you saying is, in knowing that this is draft, Sharon, but
Yeah.
just translating community speak for you, is taking some of what Ed has given you in detail here about housing actions that actually may get then formatted into funding sources, right? Like, because what Ed is saying is, if you take this designation, then it's responding to David's point of, like, other tools for funding resources. Okay.
Okay, last one on my list I've been saying this for close to a year, there are different strategies for affordable, attainable, and I'm also including senior. And I'm seeing I got a couple more Don Howells in here. In B, the attainable section, long-term affordability restrictions may be a less important strategy. I mean, this is looking at people who want to be first-time homeownership and eventually have the opportunity to move up. Now, that's not gonna work in affordable housing, because you gotta have those deed restrictions. But if we're encouraging attainable housing, it's a different category, and the strategy should be different.
Ed has spoken as well very eloquently about that, how
And the last comment on, I'll just finish up.
Yeah,
The last comment under C, enable seniors with high assets but low income, that I think is also a Don Howell. But I forget which
So
one.
I
which one that
wanted to
came
bring
up.
that up a little bit to discussion. I think we all come at this with our, own perspectives. Biases, or whatever you want to call it. I would like to expand a little bit of the language that we've heard that's in the comprehensive plan about young families and our teacher firefighter, but we've said it better. What have we said? We've said, that's what you're saying with attainable.
You can define it there.
We have language in the comprehensive plan about, a robust community. And so maybe there's a way to put into David's, it seems a little, I love our seniors. It seems a little senior heavy right now. So maybe we could allow, and you don't have to take the seniors out, but could we add maybe some language to this about, like working families?
It goes somewhere under B, yeah.
Yeah. Sharon, you see it in other places. I know you have put it very well. Working families, key elements of the community, that should go in B about attainable, because that's who you're talking about, who build wealth and home equity, and equity through their homes, and we should expand that out.
Yeah, in this particular draft, I've just done the shortcut and said attainable and assuming, everybody knows what we're talking about.
No, but we need to put
But
that
I
there.
know there's much
Yeah,
more
we need to
description
put that
of
out.
already existing in.
How controversial, elaborate to me about senior housing, targeted senior housing and care facilities. I hear that, and, I asked, like, do you want to build a nursing home in Harwich? And that's fine. Is this a specific thing for the Don Howell vote, which is cool? It seems a little specific to me, and again, I'm coming at it with my bias. I would like to open it to the other members of the committee. I hadn't heard a lot about this high assets, low income public housing or senior housing. Is that a little too specific, or is that actually representative of what we've heard, or?
Our missing member, I'd like to hear what he has to say
Yeah.
about this. Right.
Yeah, Jim, yeah.
Well, wasn't that a comment by that one woman at the second?
The workshop? The
Yeah,
Asian
thank you, workshop, that's the word, where she was saying, no, let's not just forget about one bedrooms, because, you've got a lot of seniors that want to downsize, but they can't find anything to downsize to. That they would vacate the larger houses, that, they don't need a 3-bedroom house, but there's no 1-bedroom condo, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm fine with it. I think it maybe just stands out to me because I was missing some of the elaboration of attainable. It seemed a little senior heavy, but if we elaborate on why we care about attainable housing for young families and working members of the community and things like that, that virtuous cycle of, enough enrollment to maintain our high-quality schools and things like that. Yep. So,
Well, I'm assuming that's where the population drop is gonna be starting 2035, or 2045.
so for housing, it sounds like we're gonna make sure that these specificities are in the action plan, and then this is a step off, a draft for an executive summary, assuming that that's the only thing that people read. Is there anything else we're missing from here off the top of our head, understanding it's a draft?
Well, just to comment on the issue about what attainable is, in the home rule petition we passed last year, the definition was 200% of average median income. was the top range for attainable. That being said, the home rule petition didn't get passed. So there were a number that basically were on the same, had the same language in them, and all of them were not passed because they took up the housing bill, the housing and the seasonal, and in that, they made a blanket allowance for housing trusts to be able to work with attainable projects. Unfortunately, I think some of those regulations are still being worked out by the Seasonal Communities Advisory Board.
So we've got, in terms of the state legislation, we've got kind of a work in progress. Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Sort of.
yeah.
Okay. I had made a note, so, okay, yeah, I mean, and I had made a note to myself, question role in HPP summary and LCP, which, I mean, we can live to fight that another day, I think. But, Christine and Sharon, are there, I think this is really good work David did. Is there questions? Is there something that we're?
You've got to,
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, can somebody explain to me quickly what this seasonal designation is going to do for us?
Might answer that.
Well, there's a number of things. One, some of the sort of large items that are called out in the seasonal communities section of it allows towns to build employee housing. It allows seasonal, it creates year-round housing trusts to be created, in addition to the affordable housing trust which we have now, which has a lot more room to maneuver in terms of what type of housing, affordable, attainable housing the trust works on. And then there's a whole pocket of different funding batches on a whole variety of different issues for infrastructure, funding infrastructure to benefit projects and a number of things like that. But a lot of it is it's still a work in progress.
I'm sorry, so does it override things that we have in place, a town has in place as far as for employee housing and stuff? I mean, so you still have to go through all the town?
You still have to go through town regulations if there was an affordable housing project,
Yeah.
if they wanted to go through, create multifamily housing, or if they wanted to use a comprehensive permit. The regulatory processes, this is not gonna impact current regulations. But also, I would add, this elevates us, seasonal communities, with the governor's office and our state legislature in terms of advocating for some of the issues that we face that's a little bit more unique than other communities in the Commonwealth. And I think relative to infrastructure funding, working with other state agencies, especially for Mass DOT, DEP, some of the environmental concerns, coastal resiliency projects, this has really been a good opportunity to, express a lot of the challenges that face our communities, given that we have a dual economy, a year-round and seasonal economy. And, some of the good things, but also just some of the challenges that, Boston's not dealing with. And, it's, some of these, programs that are implemented at the state level, it's not a one-size-fits-all. And we need to tailor some of these projects and programs and funding, sources to tailor to our community.
Conversely, it's really, considering, some of the select board's objections to Beacon Hill and things like this, it's actually a very, you put it so eloquently, acknowledgement of that a town like Harwich is unique.
Yes.
And it's giving some of that, like, and the stress and what is meaningful impact on housing and stuff like that is different here, which is what some of our select board members are saying.
And not just housing, also
Right,
for water
right,
quality
right,
and
but all
infrastructure.
just things you referenced,
Because a lot of the state funding sources are based on year-round population. And for our community, we have populations that fluctuate
Yes.
significantly for 4 or 5 months
So
of
it's
the year.
acknowledging that.
And the real
there are
estate
serious
market is
impacts that
driven by
aren't being
second homes.
compensated.
Yeah,
It's a different
Yeah.
beast.
yeah,
Forgive
Thank
my-
you.
yeah.
Forgive my private sector
No,
point of view here, but shouldn't we be saying more about this loud up front in the executive
think-
summary? And one of our key first actions would be to crawl through that legislation and figure out how we can get more than our fair share.
here was the challenge of that, is it happened, we've been at this for 2.5 years. Thing
beginning of time.
changes.
Well, I mean, we ought
Since
to
when
just-
when we were writing on papyrus at the
But that's
beginning
an
of this.
easy one to raise the flag on.
And it happened last October,
Yeah.
and
Something will
it's
happen
still
again
rolling
immediately
out.
after.
But that's
And
okay,
it's
but that's
published,
there,
but-
but I think we ought to acknowledge
So,
it.
I know, I think in the executive summary, to David's point, maybe that really needs to be raised up.
Specifically.
Yep, in the seasonal, under maximizing funding sources, so, take, whatever Brian just said, but, maximize Harwich's standing as a seasonal community.
More than our fair share.
Yep, that'll go over big.
Similarly, I think, in the energy, climate issues, the issue of looking into qualifying as a climate leader, green community, because, nobody's really, right now, there's lots of money available to help communities that are going to be green. As we get closer to 2050, when we're supposed to hit some goal that the state has set, a lot of those funding sources are going to be starting to dry up and be replaced with a stick rather than the carrot to,
How about we work with our new state rep and
Yes.
be the example
Yes.
of how to leverage some of these
The
opportunities?
ultimate carbon sink trees, but anyway, so I get, that's a really good, really detailed piece of feedback to the executive summary and David's points, and in the action plan as we all age through this process of this comprehensive plan, that the seasonal designation is, yeah.
Yeah, I want to be the first.
Okay,
to
so
go.
can we move on then to
Yeah.
community design?
Let's do it.
Just, David, before you walk through, the comment that I would make here is that I think you're the only person in this room who probably could have written this, because you were the town planner and you have a more detailed knowledge of the individual neighborhoods and
I love it.
what
It's
their
great.
their planning
It's
needs
great.
are.
It's great. You can't talk
Yeah.
about East Harwich without the sewer. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like their
So,
superpower out there.
I think it's great to have this level of, it would be great to have this level of detail in the plan, so that people recognize, that we recognize, that we're not, different parts of town need to be treated differently.
And, and you just said it, somewhat, the work, it's got to we have to make sure it's in the action plan, but to stem some of the criticism that it's not specific enough, even though an executive summary is supposed to be the summary, really having this level of detail in the executive summary will stem some of that criticism. And it does, there are unifying ideas in it, so. You want to take us through it, David?
I don't have a whole lot to say on this page. Under East, well, there are different villages. There's 4 of them that deserve more immediate attention, and I want to make sure we word this in a way that we're not ignoring the other 3. But still, 4 of them need to have more attention. East Harwich, we got to address the neutral flow issue. Margot, I got yours in there on making sure we have the offsets.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. There's a huge number of people who are gonna focus on that.
Yep.
So, that's what I'm saying about East Harwich. West Harwich, balance the historic and the housing. Harwich Center, we got a lot of public stuff all over the place, and I just think it's important that we have a coordinated plan on all those.
Would someone nail you for, not nail you, I'm adopting this crazy language. If we're saying the Queen Anne properties in North Harwich, is that what we're saying that is? Should we say something, and the town owns land there, and that is intended for affordable housing, and presuming that project will go forward, should we probably include something about North Harwich here and say something?
I don't think so, because that really doesn't, I guess,
The- I- what-
I've always been a village.
The road is the hotter issue there, right?
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure, and that's a Don Howell point.
I guess my focus has been on villages, and certainly what's going on in North Harwich has nothing to do with the village.
But it's their village. It's
I know
North
it's not.
Harwich's village.
It,
It's one of the 7 villages.
it is, but it's more, at this point, a geographic designation than a place that people congregate in.
Yeah, I understand, I know what you're
Yeah.
saying. I would advocate that we should consider, that your point is semantic. I totally appreciate that.
Yeah.
Given currently what is facing the town and the feedback about infrastructure, I would consider adding
I think-
North Harwich, Queen Anne.
I think
Road.
that's totally fine under infrastructure. I'm not sure I would do it under community design.
Well, and I would add to the infrastructure, it's not just Queen Anne Road, but I think you could make a comment of infrastructure across all the villages. For example, East Harwich would need sidewalks. There's
East Harwich has
infrastructure that's needed to deal with the design.
So, okay, so we could be at either or, because this isn't the whole executive, it can be a yes and. So we can add, if this is the baseline of the executive summary, can we add, people don't read it as categories, community design, what should be another part of I think we have to have something in the executive summary about infrastructure, and the only large-ish public housing project before the town currently is Queen Anne. And, right, well, the big one, Christine's thinning her eyes, I don't mean it that way, but like, the town owns the land, I'm not saying it correct, the town owns the land, that foreseeably something will be built there. Road infrastructure is impactful, we have to say something about that in the executive summary.
As I understand it, David has mentioned it in item number 6, that he hasn't excluded it, that there is a
Okay,
need for
okay.
design studies in that specific area. We haven't excluded, he doesn't.
I'm just trying to say it so we're not criticized.
I'd put the word in it, get infrastructure in there somewhere.
But it's mentioned there, we haven't forgotten, this is something, before anything is done, let's see what's up there. It's always that same pattern, what I've heard throughout the meeting. It's the pattern of inventory what we have, let's work with what we have, and then move forward with what we have. So that would follow the same thing. Always let's do a study, and it's mentioned here and that's where I'm thinking, without it being front and center.
I guess, yeah, no, how much we're in the executive summary, hang to these, we're gonna be running out of time here, but a little bit, if this is the draft of the executive summary,
Yeah.
what else should we have?
Under 6, you could add a D. And talk about the Old Main Street.
But are we talking about the same, are we talking about the same thing here? Are we talking about Marceline? Is that what you're talking
Guess we're
about?
supposed to call it the Queen Anne
I
property.
know, but
Marshline is
Because-
not in the east, north side.
Well, what are we call, so, and this is the issue, the village, and I know it's
Yeah,
it's
I
not a
think-
walkable village, but
think-
it is a part of Harwich where
Oh, it
development
is.
is gonna happen.
It
That
is.
is somebody's neighborhood.
I live on Queen Anne Road.
Yes.
And I don't know what village I'm in. I don't.
It's a separate meeting.
So, you know,
What intersection are you?
I'm right across the street from Cornelius Pond. So it's about a half a mile east of 124 intersection. So it'll make it harder for me to get out of my driveway.
Probably, you're
Yes.
technically either in.
Harwich Center? Harwich Center, okay. All right.
And what, and Christine, what is, what is the Queen Anne property?
256 Queen Anne.
Yes, but what is that, what village is that technically in?
I believe it's in Harwich Center.
Harwich Center, yeah.
That's Harwich.
I goes
No, that's
Pleasant
north.
Lake.
Point of Harwich.
That's
and-
Pleasant Lake.
Didn't
Let me-
David look
let me-
at a map and that's
Yeah, let me get the
Pleasant
map
Lake?
out. Pleasant Lake.
I mean, I don't care. Like, I mean, I do care,
I think
but
what-
like.
I think what we need instead is something early in the plan that talks about the difference between the geographic villages and the actual
Cultural.
human villages.
Yeah,
If we're just trying to sort of stay on this executive summary a little bit, I'm not sure that anyone, well, I keep saying this, that anyone reads it in that detail, but yes. And it's used interchangeably. I guess I would, as we circle around this in our last 8 minutes, if we're working on a draft of an executive summary, something about access, infrastructure around buildable projects, which is highlighted by Queen Anne.
is that in, Sharon, is it in the transportation section? Because
There
that's
is.
really where it belongs.
Yeah, so maybe it's a pullout in the executive summary about transportation.
Or,
It's definitely in transportation,
Yeah.
and I think, infrastructure in general, like sidewalks and other
Yeah.
it appears in a few places.
Yeah.
if you look at David's number 6, there's the Route 28 commercial corridor and opportunities for conversions to residential use. And then he talks about commercial industrial centers on Queen Anne and Great Western. You could say, design infrastructure improvements to the Queen Anne,
Yeah,
Old Main,
yes, yep.
Main Street
Yeah.
extension.
That is
corridor.
it is a point, a very
Because,
valid point of
you know,
feedback from Selectman
Because
Howell.
we've got
Yes, yeah.
basically 3 east-west corridors. You got that one, you got Great Western
Right.
39, and you've got 28.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does that, I just want to make sure Sharon's understanding what we're saying here.
A little, yeah, I'm getting the general thread, but I'm.
Maybe, I guess,
little-
what we're kind of
Way
going is
caught up on
that
all
this
of
is, we're using this as the existing, as a draft of the executive summary,
Yeah.
and it's kind of also the launching point that we're gonna need more in the executive summary.
Hopefully I did
Right.
enough so you
That
can pass it.
I gather. This was, didn't grab quite the 3 intersections.
The feedback being that the
My house
Queen
is
Anne
about right
property,
here.
sits at an intersection of North and, and that will be, my point is, something's gonna
Yeah, so
happen there,
where
and
do you
there's
live?
traffic impact. And then, more of a hypothetical, west of there is the Pine Oaks project, but that is much more deeply hypothetical, but in
I'm
talking
gonna
about
circle it so he'll see it.
traffic in that area across that road. All right. In our remaining 6 minutes, we've talked about governance a little bit, so we know that's potentially controversial. I think your draft of it is quite lovely.
I want to make it a little bit more controversial.
Yeah,
It
let's make it
occurs to me,
controversial.
in looking at some of this and looking at, the implications on making zoning bylaw changes, either, because it has been so badly amended over the years that it would be ideal,
You let it out.
it would be ideal to, pass another $250,000 and have somebody come in and rewrite the thing and have it make sense. That not being a possibility, some of the things that we recommend in here that have zoning bylaw amendment implications that possibly suggesting that to do that work, that the select board appoint a limited term zoning bylaw revision committee to work with the zoning board and the planning board. Because neither of those boards, I mean, they like dealing with projects much more than they like dealing with.
It's a great idea to put in the
Yeah.
governance,
Yeah.
sure. And it's
Yeah.
appointed, but I would suggest in the governance, and, I mean, I don't know, like, when we throw this against the wall, I don't even know where the wall is, but like, or when we throw this against the wall,
Yeah.
what is gonna
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
out of this, and it's all good. Okay?
What we heard from the planning board, I mean, the planning board members themselves were saying that they
Correct.
thought the zoning bylaw needed a complete rewrite. And so I think we want to be a little careful here because that is a planning board responsibility. So I don't want to
Or we could,
make them think that we're usurping
We
their.
deeply respect the planning board, yes.
we could recommend that we see two possible ways of doing it.
Yeah.
One, a total revamp, or two,
Yeah,
bring, appointing a limited term
Mhm.
group to help
yeah,
the two boards work it through. Because, you're right, the zoning bylaw is more the province of the planning board, but it's the zoning board of appeal that had to rip their hair out when they don't understand what's been done.
So if you really want to go off into the outer space,
3 minutes, David, 3 minutes.
I don't know if they've changed it since.
He's gonna
I left.
drop
This is from Christine, who has patience of a saint, yes.
They may have found this didn't work in the 15 years since I left Vermont, but they changed statewide from a zoning board and a planning board to a development review board, which did all the zoning board functions and the planning board's regulatory functions. And they had a planning board that had no regulatory functions, and just did zoning
Just did
bylaws and
plan.
plan changes.
yeah.
That makes a heck of a lot more sense,
Yeah,
but
it does.
is it
Yeah.
ever gonna happen in Massachusetts? Probably not.
The first governmental board I was appointed to was the Planning and Zoning Commission in Albany, California. And we did everything.
All right, so governance, we short but mighty on the governance, and then, Christine, thank you, we're so falling behind your professional expertise about capital infrastructure and facilities plan. What should we know?
I'm learning. I met with the town administrator, so as well as Sharon. Sharon gave me the criteria for the Cape Cod Commission in terms of what their expectations are relative to the regional policy plan, to be consistent, and so I'm sort of, getting up to speed where the town's at on their capital improvements. And so I'll have more. I'm hoping to meet with the town administrator this week, but what we have is we're just starting.
Got it.
Yeah,
Digging
and that,
in, so.
this is another area where we need to be aware that there is a town capital facilities plan, and, to stitch them together so that we're not, creating something out of whole cloth that isn't consistent with,
I guess that's what,
Correct.
we've sort of stayed out of the weeds on it, and that's why I've left it to the professional staff. I think that's
Yeah.
like a really great
Yeah.
point of,
Absolutely, I agree with Margot that the capital outlay committee does exist, and we want to make sure that we're documenting whatever information they have. I'm also following up on any strategic plans at the select board, at the select board level, if they've done that in the past. Some communities do it. But it's also helpful because oftentimes it's the select board that are initiating a lot of the infrastructure projects and overseeing the capital outlay committee. And, going forward with major infrastructure projects, for the next 5 to 10 years, so.
okay. With that, we can close the meeting.
We close just
Yes,
quickly.
I have, but go ahead, and then I have
was gonna
something to say too.
I know we dismissed the governance pretty quickly. But
No, we're not dismissing it, we're just, yeah.
But I'm wondering if one way to fix this is to soften it a little bit, to say, we recognize that it's the responsibility of the select board to ensure that this plan is carried out, but we recommend, as a committee, we recommend that this new approach be set up to aid the select board in that.
That's good, that's
Facilitation.
good.
Would you you and Mary have owned that? Would you mind taking a draft of it and sending it to Sharon and keep her current, and we love
I think that's
it.
all we need, because the
Yeah.
structure is here.
Yeah.
It's how we
Yeah.
introduced it.
Bernadette, please.
Sometimes it's the semantics. I had mentioned this to both Brian and Mary before. Governance sounds so much like government, and maybe implementation as a
Oh,
Well,
term
that's-
is a better one to be using. Maybe that's where people's hackles are getting up, or where some people are.
Yeah, you could be right about that.
That
So-
is,
Talking about-
that's the word, but we keep describing it as governance.
I know.
Yeah, I know, in Sharon's draft, it says
It says
implementation.
implementation,
Okay,
we
so
took governance
maybe
out of it.
It won't hurt to use that.
sure, implementation.
Because when I
Yeah.
first heard you guys, I wasn't sure what I was
Implementation
hearing,
board.
and I understand the
Implementation.
government
It's
and
like a
governing and
reflex.
Implementation. With that, we had, the sand is always shifting underneath us a little bit here about the timing, that we had, just so you know, some discussion about meeting more frequently. I would, until we kind of get a sense of our timing and our contractual obligations and stuff like that, let's hold off on that. We are working, we are being productive in between. We've got executive summaries, you're going out to regulatory bodies, you're modifying language. We are not, sitting on our heels, yes, and we're working the back channels, all of them, so to speak. So our next meeting is the 4th, March 4th, same time, same bat channel, 5 to 7 here. We will lead the way we want to be led, just so you know. I will reach out directly to the interim chair, to Jeff Handler, and just sort of, and he'll watch this movie, he'll watch the meeting, he's very thorough. I will connect with him on a human and colleague level, and just kind of share our thinking about the timing, and which he gets totally, and then for record and governance, we will, I'll share with you a formal letter that's like just kind of process about the timing and the deliberation, and we'll keep it to feedback and not necessarily including us, but, the process that we've talked about. Cool. With that, can we get a move to close?
Just
Yes.
one comment. As you're making changes in this, make sure that we're redlining them, because I think it's going to be important to point out
What's
to the
changed.
select board is what changes we made in response to their comments.
And Sharon, if you want to bring us into the 21st century about how these documents are dealt with, I mean, I know Ty and Bond has a lot of, you have, but if it's happening, track changes in doc, that's like technology of 1995, which I'm fine with, but to echo Margot's point, he's shaking his head. To echo Margot's point, if there's a better way to use it, leverage tech to reflect that feedback, push us along.
And
Yeah.
And I'm,
I'm not sure there is, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
It's available to us, there is.
available to you.
and I said, well, that's nice, but it only covers a little bit of it, because I look out at the bottom.
It's
and
all-
It's at the top, that's a different section.
Yes, there are separate tabs. I tried to combine as much as. I
Oh,
could,
yeah, it's
but,
all good, it's all good.
Yeah.
But if there are collaborative softwares out there.
Of course there
I just
are.
don't know
Of course there are, we just can't use them.
I moved to close.
There's 72 of them, all right, all right. All in favor of closing? Yes, all right.